All right, hey, the mask is on, the mask is off, the workday is on. All right. So how about that? Look, today's today's lecture is going to be again about imperialism. It's going to be a little bit longer than the ones previously, or there's more slides. I'll try to compact it as much as I can and give you the information that you need to know for the assignment. And so it has to do with various places around the world America acquired land and had an influence in, all right, which is going to go right along, correlate right with the assignment that I'm going to give you guys. So, acquiring new lands. Now, Puerto Rico, remember, America got Puerto Rico from Spain in that Spanish American War. So, that is why a majority of Puerto Ricans speak Spanish. That's we have a Spanish teacher here at the school who is from Puerto Rico. Now I say Puerto Ricans, but they're also Americans. So that's a question on the test. Puerto Rico is part of America, just like North Carolinians. All right, they're also Americans. So Puerto Ricans wanted independence or some element of self-government. The United States didn't really give that to them. Initially, the island was ruled militarily. Now, we will see this time and time again. After a war happens, the United States tends to rule the area that they either acquired or that the war was just fought militarily. This happens in Germany, all right, after World War II. If you go back to American History 1, which I also teach, the United States did that in the South, the old Confederacy, they ruled it militarily. And so why do you think the United States wanted to maintain a ruling presence in Puerto Rico? Well, the location is important. Puerto Rico is near the mainland United States. And but also for those other reasons, okay, because Puerto Rico is rich in natural resources. It's a good place to grow crops like sugar and other tobacco and other things. So that's Puerto Rico. Here's just a cartoon. So here is Uncle Sam here. He's teaching the lecture, and if you look at the students, well, one, look at the reaction of the students in the front. They look somewhat scared, right? And what does it say on them? Each of them is labeled with an area that the United States had an influence in, or a territory that the United States obtained. So one there is Cuba, one is Puerto Rico, we have Hawaii, the Philippines, and then in the back, now also notice what color or ethnicity are those students. Well, they're people of color, whereas the students in the back are deemed to be Americans, and they don't look scared. One, they also most of them are white, so there is some racism taking place in this photo. There's a lot going on. So you have also the Native American back there. He's studying, but he's not with the other white students. He's alone by himself. You have an African American there. I would assume there's two of them. It looks like one is waiting to get into the classroom. The other is cleaning the classroom. So there's racism going on in this political cartoon. The Foraker Act, all right, this was an act that you probably will need to, well, you will need to know it for the assignment. It set up a return to civil government in Puerto Rico, but it also gave the president authority to appoint Puerto Rico's governor and members of its legislative house. So the United States is still ruling over Puerto Rico, and this happens today. For instance, a few years ago, there was a Hurricane Maria, I think, if I'm not mistaken. It hit Puerto Rico and devastated the island. Well, who went in to provide relief to the island? America did. All right. President Trump went out there and he was doing things to try to, I guess, give some relief to the Puerto Ricans. But Puerto Rico is part of America. Make sure you know that for the test. I remember during this time the Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, President Trump said, I spoke with the president of Puerto Rico on the phone today. Well, he is the president of Puerto Rico. So unless he was like talking to himself, I don't know what was going on with that, but he could have just had a mistake. He could have misspoke. But I just want everyone to make sure you know that Puerto Rico is part of America. Students often do not understand that for whatever reason. It's not only students; it's other Americans. So in Cuba, Cuba's the next part. Now the United States did not obtain Cuba as a part of the United States like they did Puerto Rico. But what happened in Cuba was first, the United States passed this Taylor Amendment, which said, hey, you will have a right to self government. We went and fought the Spanish so you guys could get self government. But at the same time, the United States does this, but at the same time, the United States maintains a military presence on the island. We still do this today. They maintain a military presence on the island, similar to Puerto Rico. And what the United States said is, look, we helped you basically get your independence, but so you need to do something for us. So this Platt Amendment, you need to know the Platt Amendment for the test, for the assignment. It's also going to be on the final exam. The Platt Amendment basically says the United States still has the right to intervene in Cuba. The United States could buy or lease, there should be an E on lease there, land on the island for naval stations. And Cuba becomes the United States protectorate. But the big thing there is the United States could buy or lease land for naval stations. We still do this today. We still lease land from Cuba for a naval station called Guantanamo Bay. And that's what I told you. When I went to Cuba, that's where I went to, Guantanamo Bay. So I didn't actually like really see the countryside. I was just on a naval base there, and I was on a deployment. All right, so that's Cuba. All Cuba and Puerto Rico are in the Caribbean. The Philippines is in the Pacific. So these are the two places where the United States has involvement in during this era of imperialism. Emilio Aguinaldo, he was the leader of the Philippines. They were under the impression after the Spanish-American War that the United States would give them independence, kind of like the United States promised Cuba independence, and Cuba did get its independence. But the Philippines is different, and we're going to see what's a little bit different about that. Well, here's another cartoon. This is President McKinley, and again, this goes along with the white man's burden. What is he doing to that Filipino child? He's baptizing him. Okay, that's the idea. The Filipino child does not look happy about being baptized. And in the water there, you can't really see the water, but it says civilization. In other words, it's a political cartoon saying that the United States is going to take the Filipinos and these other people of what they deemed as lower peoples or ethnicities, and we're going to baptize them or wash them in civilization. So that's the idea behind the cartoon. That's what it's a political cartoon. There's also racism going on in this cartoon as well. Filipinos, so they rebelled. Aguinaldo and the Filipinos rebel. The United States puts down the rebellion, and they force them to live in designated zones. All right, this isn't it's with the lack of sanitation and poor food, but what practices that similar to what we're going to see later in World War II. The United States does this to Japanese Americans, but it's somewhat similar to in Cuba when the Cubans tried to rebel and the Spanish sent in Verigliano Weyler and put them in concentrated zones. So the United States sets up a government in the Philippines similar to the one in Puerto Rico. In other words, the United States now owns or basically owns the Philippines, similar to as they did in Puerto Rico. They didn't grant them independence like Cuba was granted independence. There's another political cartoon. So there is a Filipino, and the United States is basically forcing him, holding him hostage with things, but at the same time it says liberty, civilization. We're holding you hostage and forcing you to conform to liberty and civilizations. Notice I put that in quotation marks because the the United States looked at these people in the Philippines and in Puerto Rico and in Cuba as uncivilized. All right. So there's some hypocrisy going on with this on the part of the United States. Foreign influence in China. This is the next one. So the United States, again, the Philippines is in Asia or the Pacific. Now, since we have a hand or we're involved in the Pacific, let's go ahead and move into China. China had been controlled by various European countries. In the United States, what they did, because again, it's all about money, right? They set up an open door policy in China, meaning they could trade with other nations in China. So China, the Chinese do not like this. They don't like people coming into their homeland and then taking over and trading with each other at their own expense. And we're going to see they get a little irritated with that as well. There's another political cartoon. You can look at this PowerPoint. I'll put it online. You can look at these cartoons on your own. Again, the open door policy allowed the U.S. and other nations to share trading rights in China. No single nation had monopoly on trading rights in China, but also the Chinese were they were at the mercy of this. They weren't making money; they were at the expense of these other nations making money trading in their own in China. So what do? They do something called the Boxer Rebellion. The Boxer Rebellion was it was these Chinese who were really into martial arts. If you're into Asiatic culture, they're into martial arts, and they rebelled. And so they rebelled, and what happened was the United States had to go in and put down the rebellion. So it says an international force led by the United States marched on the Chinese capital, and they had to put down the rebellion. Now, who plays a big part in putting down this rebellion for the U.S.? The United States Marines. They send in the United States Marines. And I'm going to tell you right now, anytime the United States sends in the Marines, it doesn't typically end well for the other guys. It didn't typically end well for the Chinese right here. Because when the Marines go in, they mean business. Business is about to pick up. And for the U.S., for the Chinese, business did not pick up. And so they put down this Boxer Rebellion. That's the end. Now, on the assignment here, okay, on the assignment it looked at, basically it's going to list all three of those places with Puerto Rico, the Philippines, before Cuba, and China, and then it's going to give you a fifth one with Hawaii. Now, I already told you about Hawaii a couple of days ago, so you're going to have to look at it, put what specific acts or policies happened. So that would be like the Teller Amendment, the Foraker Act, the Platt Amendment, those things, and then the events. All right, and then why do the United States want to be involved in the area? Well, the reason why the United States want to be involved is because money. All right, that's why this is typically why wars start, because they're all about money or things of value. All right. So I talked to my graduate school professor, and she was telling me the same thing. I said, well, what about the Trojan War now? That was started over Helen, if you remember. And she said, well, that's considered an object of value, or was then, but that's not, we're not studying that. I'm telling you, like most of these wars that we studied, the Plains Wars, that's about land, which had gold on it. These imperialism wars, again, about land. So that's why wars start. Again, if you have any questions, please email me.